They stand like mountains born from the sand. From a distance, the Great Pyramids seem perfect. They are simple shapes against a vast sky, but when you draw near, you see the truth. They are a city of stones. Each block is a giant. Each one is a testament to immense effort. For thousands of years, we have looked at them and asked a simple question: how? The answers have often drifted into legend. Some stories say giants their hands as large as wagons stacked these stones like pebbles. Other tales whisper of lost magic, help from the stars. These are the myths. They are born from a sense of awe that is too large for a simple explanation. But history lives in the space between myth and method. The truth is often more compelling than any legend. The pyramids are a product of both wonder and work. They were not built by magic. They were built by people. They were built with simple tools. They were built with sweat ingenuity, a breathtakingly ambitious plan. The real story does not diminish the magic. It simply changes its source. The magic is not in some forgotten power. It is the raw, focused power of human hands and human minds working together toward a single, monumental goal. Picture a day at the foot of the growing monument. The Egyptian sky is a brilliant, cloudless blue. The air hums with the sound of industry. It is a sound of thousands of voices, of stone grinding against stone, of foremen calling out orders. This is not a place of silent suffering. It is a bustling city dedicated to a single purpose. Workers move with practiced rhythm. They are not faceless slaves laboring under the lash. They are skilled craftsmen, laborers, specialists. They are farmers, working during the season of the Nile's flood when their fields are underwater. This work provides for their families. It is a national project. The people who built the pyramids lived nearby. Archaeologists have uncovered the remains of a vast settlement. It was a planned community, with long galleries that served as dormitories. They have found bakeries capable of producing thousands of loaves of bread each day. They have found evidence of fish, beef, goat in the workers' diets. This was a well-fed workforce. They even had access to medical care. Skeletons found in the workers' cemetery show healed bones, amputations, and even signs of brain surgery. These people were valued. They were the engine of the entire operation, and their well-being was essential to its success. The work was divided among teams. We know this from graffiti left on the stones themselves, hidden deep inside the structure. These marks were never meant to be seen by the public. They named the work gangs, the drunkards of Menkor, the friends of Khufu. These names suggest a sense of camaraderie, of shared identity and pride in their difficult task. A foreman would oversee several of these gangs. This was a highly organized system. The air would be thick with dust. The sun would be relentless. But there was a rhythm to life here. They were building a tomb for their king, but they were also building a life for themselves on the ground. The pyramids are made of stone, millions of tons of it. The primary building blocks were limestone, quarried right there on the Giza Plateau. But the finer stones, the ones used for the outer casing and the inner chambers, came from far away. Smooth white Tura limestone came from across the Nile. Hard pink granite, used for the sarcophagus and portcullis blocks, came from Aswan, more than 500 miles to the south. Getting these massive blocks to the construction site was one of the first great challenges. The solution was the river. The Nile was Egypt's lifeline, and it became the builder's superhighway. Imagine the sight. A fleet of wooden barges, specially built for the task, floating down the river. On each barge sits a colossal block of stone weighing as much as 50 tons. These were not small rafts. They were sturdy vessels, engineered to handle incredible weight. The journey from Aswan would take weeks. Teams of men would guide the boats, using the river's current to their advantage. They would navigate the channels, avoiding sandbanks and shallows. The river did the heaviest work, carrying the stones across the vast distances of the desert landscape. It was a slow, majestic, and dangerous procession. Once the boats reached Giza, they entered a system of man-made canals and harbors. Recent archaeological discoveries, including the diary of a foreman named Merer, have confirmed this. He details the transport of limestone from Tura to the Pyramid of Khufu. His logbook describes how his crew would open dikes, let the Nile's floodwaters fill artificial channels, bringing the boats right to the foot of the plateau. The harbor was a place of intense activity. Here, the stones were carefully unloaded from the barges. The river's annual flood was a key part of the plan. This was the peak season for transporting stone. The Nile was not just a source of water and food, it was an active partner in the construction, a powerful force of nature harnessed by human ingenuity. The stone had arrived at the harbor. Now came the next great problem. How do you move a block the size of a small room across soft, shifting sand? Dragging it would be nearly impossible. The friction would be immense. The block would sink. The solution they found was simple, yet brilliant. They used large wooden sleds. The massive block would be lashed to the sled with thick ropes. Teams of men would pull the sled across the sand, but they had one more trick. We can see this trick in ancient artwork. A relief from Jehuti-Hotep shows a man pouring liquid from a jar onto the sand. For years, people thought it was ceremonial. Then physicists tested the idea. The right amount of water makes the sand firm. It reduces friction dramatically. Wet sand doesn't bunch up like dry sand. Pouring water cut the pulling force by half. This was not magic, it was physics. Keen observation applied to a practical problem. The builders understood their environment. They knew how sand behaved. They knew how water could change its properties. This small act captures the spirit of the project. Clever, efficient solutions with materials at hand. Using knowledge, not just brute force. Dozens pulling in unison could move what once seemed immovable. Grunts and chants as the great stone slid slowly but steadily. This method required careful management. Teams to lay wooden tracks when ground was uneven. Teams to supply the water. Teams to prepare the path, the pullers, the human engine. Each block's movement was a complex ballet of coordinated labor. It was slow, grueling work, but it worked, stone by stone. From the harbor up the causeway to the base of the growing pyramid, all thanks to a little bit of water on the sand. The stones were at the base of the pyramid. The next challenge was perhaps the greatest of all. How did they lift them up? The blocks had to be raised hundreds of feet into the air and placed with precision. The most common theory involves ramps. The idea is simple. The Egyptians built a long, sloping ramp of mud brick, rubble, and dragged the stones up it. But this simple idea creates complex problems. A single straight ramp reaching the top of the Great Pyramid would have been a mile long. It would have contained a volume of material almost as large as the pyramid itself. Because of this, experts have proposed other theories. Perhaps they used a ramp that wrapped around the pyramid as it grew, like a road spiraling up a mountain. This would require less material, but it would create problems with surveying. How would they keep the corners perfectly aligned if they were covered by a ramp? Another idea is that of an internal ramp. Some evidence suggests a ramp may have been built inside the pyramid's core, corkscrewing its way up just beneath the outer blocks. This would explain the lack of evidence for a massive external ramp. It is also likely that they did not use just one method. They probably used a combination of techniques. A large straight ramp may have been used for the lower levels, where the bulk of the stone was placed. For the higher levels, they may have switched to a smaller, more nimble system. Levers could have been used to lift blocks from one level to the next. Small, zigzagging ramps on the face of the pyramid could have helped them maneuver the stones into place. The final capstone, the pyramidion, may have been raised using a complex system of wooden scaffolding and counterweights. The truth is, we do not know for sure. The ramps were made of temporary materials and were likely dismantled as the pyramid was finished. They left few traces. This is one of the enduring mysteries. We have the finished product, a mountain of perfectly placed stone, but the machine that built it has vanished. The pyramids are not just big, they are precise. The Great Pyramid of Giza is a near-perfect square at its base. The sides are aligned almost exactly with the four cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. The margin of error is incredibly small, a feat that would be a challenge even with modern technology. This was not an accident. It was the result of sophisticated knowledge of astronomy and mathematics. The builders used the stars to find true north. They likely watched the rising and setting of a star and bisected the angle to find their line. Once they had their alignment, they had to create a perfectly level base. Any error at the bottom would be magnified enormously at the top. To achieve this, they may have used water. They could have built a low mud wall around the entire perimeter of the base and flooded the area. By marking the water level on the inside of the wall, they would have a perfectly level line. They could then cut the foundation stones to that height. Or they may have used a simpler tool, a square level, which is a wooden A-frame with a plumb line hanging from the vertex. When the line touched a mark at the center of the crossbar, the surface was level. They measured angles and slopes with remarkable accuracy. The sides of the Great Pyramid rise at an angle of roughly 51.8 degrees. To maintain this angle consistently over a height of more than 480 feet is an astonishing achievement. They likely used wooden set squares and long, straight poles to check their work as they went. Every block had to be cut to fit. But the outer casing stones were polished and cut so finely that a knife blade could not fit between them. But the outer casing stones were polished and cut so finely that a knife blade could not fit between them. This was the work of master stonemasons. This precision speaks to a different kind of effort. It was not just about muscle, it was about minds. It required surveyors, architects, mathematicians. It required a plan, a blueprint that existed long before the first stone was laid. The pyramid is a monument to intellectual power as much as it is to physical labor. They used this knowledge with the simplest of tools to create a structure of breathtaking and enduring perfection. At the top of this immense project was one man, the Pharaoh. The pyramid was his tomb, it was his monument, it was his machine for eternity. The Pharaoh was considered a living god. His journey into the afterlife was a matter of supreme national importance. The pyramid was designed to protect his body and to help his soul ascend to the heavens. The entire project expressed his power and divine status. It was his vision that set the enterprise in motion. From his palace, he received reports on progress, a distant but all-powerful presence. But he did not build it alone. His vision was made real by others. Chief among them was the vizier, his highest official, the overall project manager. Below him, architects, engineers, they drew up the plans, they calculated the angles, they solved logistical nightmares. One famous figure, Imhotep. He designed the step pyramid of Djoser. These men were highly respected. They bridged the king's divine will and the reality of mud, stone, and sand. On the ground, foremen executed the plan. Men like Merer, the boat captain with a found diary, they led the work gangs. They handled specific tasks, quarrying stone, transporting blocks, laying the pyramid's courses. They needed leadership skills to motivate their crews, to ensure work was correct and safe. A foreman's day, practical concerns, enough rope, enough water, enough food, inspect the work, settle disputes, report back to superiors. The pyramid is a story of leadership at every level. A king with celestial ambition, an architect with a revolutionary design, a foreman with tired men, and a massive stone before sunset. So we stand today in the long shadow of these creations. The desert wind blows, carrying whispers of the past. For centuries, the myths have felt compelling. Giants, gods, aliens. These stories are a way for us to express our sense of wonder. They acknowledge that what we are seeing is something that borders on the impossible. And in a way, those myths are important. They are a testament to the sheer emotional impact of the pyramids. That is their power. But the method is the true miracle. The story of human hands and human minds is more powerful than any tale of gods. It is a story of observation, of learning from the world around you. It is the story of wetting the sand. It is the story of watching the stars. It is the story of using a simple lever to move a mountain. The builders of the pyramids were not supernatural. They were people. And that is what makes their achievement so profound. They show us the outer limits of what people can do. Many questions remain. We may never know the exact configuration of the ramps. We may never uncover every tool they used. The story is incomplete, and perhaps it always will be. The sand keeps its secrets. This lingering mystery is part of the appeal. The pyramids do not give up their answers easily. They demand our attention. They reward our curiosity. Each new discovery, each new theory adds another layer to the story. The conversation between us and them across the millennia continues. In the end, the pyramids are both myth and method. They are a wonder to behold, and they are a masterpiece of work. They ask us to look up at the heavens, and they ask us to look down at the earth. When you stand there, feel the cool stone under your hand. Think of the quarry, the river, the sleds, and the ramps. Think of the foreman checking his lines and the baker pulling bread from the oven. The true story is not a single truth. It is a chorus of a million small efforts,